Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Parent Pod, brought to you by Cape Cod Moms. Every week, we're bringing you local family-friendly businesses, highlighting local parents and local community support networks, as well as discussing important topics, spreading some kindness, and so much more. Sometimes we even have a little fun. So I hope the kids are settled down. It's 8 o'clock Thursday night. I hope you have found a little area for yourself because this hour is for you. This week, we will be sharing some local author love. My guest tonight is going to be Dean Coe. He's a local children's author, and he's also the author of the Chesterfield series. And Molly, as you may know from our team, has done a couple blog reviews on his books before. He's going to be joining us tonight to talk about how he got started, a little bit more about himself, why literacy is important, about his series, and a lot of other great things. So sit back, relax, and I'm going to bring Dean on. Before I do, just a reminder that we are taking questions this evening. So if you have questions for Dean, all you have to do is submit a question, and you will be entered automatically to win a gift card to the 1856 Country Store, which is a country store over in the Cotuit, Marston's Mills, Barnstable area. They are famous for their political benches and so much more. They're not your grandmother's candy store, as many of you know. So be sure to check that out. We've had a couple winners before with this. So make sure to submit your questions tonight. We'll enter your name in random.org to be selected to win a prize. So let me bring on Dean now. Here we go. Dean's coming on in 3, 2, 1. Hi, Dean. How are you? Nice to see you.
Hi, Amy. It's nice to see you. Good to be with you.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's very, very exciting having you here tonight. As I was telling my audience before, you are a local children's author and you're from Sandwich. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself so that people can kind of get to know you and your background and things like that?
Okay. I'm a newbie to writing. My first book came out in 2014, which was a story about the Sandwich Boardwalk. And prior to that, I had had my own business for a number of years. Out of college, I started in the nonprofit sector and was primarily in the camping industry. And then, as I said, started doing Chesterton in 2014.
Wow.
That was the first book, and now we have 6 books out.
6. That's crazy. So, so you got started. You're newer to writing. So when did you first realize that you wanted to be a writer?
Well, I'd done writing all my life for my business, but not the casual fun writing that this is. Actually, it was just, when the student's ready, the teacher will show. And I guess I was ready to do it. And somebody came along to show me how to do it, and it was a weasel. I was walking in the woods with my granddaughter, who was 11 at the time, and this little creature went across the trail in front of us and stood up and looked at us for a minute. And he had an attitude about him that I liked, and I couldn't get him out of my mind. I didn't know what he was. We came back and got online, determined that it was a weasel, and I called Audubon and said, "Do we have weasels on Cape Cod?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I wrote a story about him, and then another and another and another, and pretty soon sat down with a my dog is playing with a toy. And then sat down with the children's librarian and said, "Is this stuff any good?" And she said, "Yeah, you should be thinking about publishing."
Wow.
So they're all nature-based. They're all primarily take place in the shore and marsh woods of the Cape. And there's 5 picture books. And then the kids in town just pushed me to get move into chapter books. Hey, Sadie.
Oh, I like that. So we're going to be expecting a chapter book transition soon. And is it going to still feature the weasel?
Well, it's out. The first chapter book is out, and it's
That's the
called
recent one
Wild.
that Molly reviewed, right?
That's right, Wild Moon. Molly
Wild.
reviewed it, and Molly reviewed the third book, which was about some puffins that got blown into the woods on a big storm, and that was maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago that she did that.
Oh, puffins! Puffins are one of my favorite animals. I've always wanted to go to the
Oh
little
yeah,
Puffin Island up near Nova Scotia. I've
oh
always
God, yeah,
been
yeah,
fascinated by that.
yeah. They're
So a lot of
fascinating.
the Chesterton's series really is nature based and centers around like the weasel or like you said the puffins, but Cape Cod based, nature based, environmental based,
Right.
um, and the different adventures that they have.
Yeah, it introduces a variety of animals and wildlife. Um, and the books are, there's one about the disappearing New England cottontail. There's another one that's just a fun story about how Chesterton makes a bad decision and winds up getting himself in trouble, and a few other people. And there's there there's just a variety of stories that kids love. I love to go to the schools and do readings, um, and had a major project go totally south on me. I bought a van and was heading for the national parks to take Chesterton to the national parks
Oh wow!
and do a story of endangered species at each park. And I started that March 3rd. I didn't get into one library or one school from here to Colorado
Wow!
or Texas. And then finally, they closed the national parks, and I had to abort the whole trip.
Wow. And it's such a good idea because it really could be useful within the schools and partnering with the national parks because it ties in really nicely. Your stories not only have this environmental tie to it, but like you said, one of the books centers around he makes some choices that,
Right.
might get him into trouble and what a good teaching moment that is. And I could see it really being useful, especially during it's unfortunate that the pandemic hit, but maybe we can use that to our advantage to get you into more homes so that because I think people could really use that right now. Literacy is big. We're not getting together as much anymore. Still, I know,
Right.
and so literacy is really and books are a way to escape. And
Yeah.
we got to make sure that our children are still getting that literacy. It's really easy right now to be in front of a screen, or they're even getting a lot of screen time, whether they're virtually in school, in person, and they're still getting a lot of screen time. So having a book that not only ties to the uniqueness of Cape Cod and wildlife, but also kind of teaches those lessons that kids love is a really useful tool.
And it's helpful with the teachers that I can go and talk about writing skills and reading, but my character is this friendly little weasel. So they're getting an education, you know, without really realizing what's going on. And at this time, we need to get back to nature. Our
Absolutely.
kids, our kids are missing out big time. Actually, it's probably one of the blessings, if there is one, of the virus that people are getting outside.
I agree.
Yeah, and they weren't doing it before. We were too busy for nature. So maybe there is some silver to the cloud.
Yeah, there's this little window almost that we have to take advantage here to maybe
Right.
make some positive changes across not only our home environments, our public school environments, and kind of reshape how we've thought about that and get back to nature and really include it, not only for the pandemic health wise, but we know it's going to benefit them long term in their education, having that connection to nature. because there are so many books. Like you said, you could be outside and they could be doing a whole unit because they're outside, and they could be literacy could be tied to the Chesterton series. They could be doing science through some of the science stuff with the puffins, and geography about where the puffins are from. And so there's just so many opportunities to cross-curricular educate here.
Right.
And again, a window of opportunity.
What I did do, I don't know if you're aware, but I did narrate each of the books, the 5 picture books, and a parent can go on to the website and listen to me reading one of the stories if they've got the book, and obviously the kids can read along and listen. And it was something that I put up before the pandemic, and just decided I was going to offer it free to give parents a break to at least have 20 minutes that one of the kids could sit and listen, whether on any device. They can't download it, but they can listen to it from the website.
Absolutely. And have you thought about doing some virtual, maybe partnerships with maybe some of the schools, or virtual reading? Because I know I can even think of a few Cape Kids cast members who might want to hear a virtual story hour with you, maybe about Chesterton sometime.
Yeah, I would love to do more of that. The school is wanting, both of the elementaries here in town have talked about doing something, but they're trying to get their act together, right now, and figure out so much that it's going to happen. And I would love to do a Santa series, reading the books. And
Stay tuned, everybody. Santa series coming for the holiday season. So let's go back here for a second. How long does it take you to write a book? And how do you start, Dean?
You just start, and this is what I tell the kids in school, you just start with an idea and just expand on it, and just go, and don't try and make it right. Just do it. Just write it for fun, and don't worry about somebody reading it and being critical. When I just get an idea and start, and maybe I'll abandon it and go to something else. It takes a year. With each book, it's taken just about a year. I'm working on a project right now in New Hampshire that we need to be out by next summer, and I'm just starting it. So I'm under the gun on that, but usually it's a full year from concept to book in hand. Yeah. And I self-publish.
And you do, okay, so you don't go through a publisher, so you self-publish. And do you find that process easier for you?
I'm kind of an independent cuss, and I've had my own business, and I like to be independent. I like to be in charge of my destiny, and I've talked with publishers, and I've just chosen to go my own route. It's harder, but in today's publishing world, the publishers expect the writer to be a marketing specialist as well. All of the things they used to do, the writer still has to do. So
you're almost better off keeping control sometimes.
I think so. I may change my plan on that eventually, but right now, that's where I am.
So where do you is the information, the ideas for your book all purely like environmental based and what you're seeing around this region? Or are you inspired sometimes by maybe a story you hear from one of the grandkids, and that's kind of how you made like the book with the choices? Where do you kind of get the ideas? And especially with the new chapter book, what were you inspired with that?
Well, the chapter book is a break from the others, a significant break from the others. Um, and I say that because the first half of the book is about wild animals on the Cape, and it's about Chesterton and an adventure with wild animals, kind of a mystery that happens on a full moon night. However, I also wanted to try and do something very different, and this came from some personal experience. I wanted to introduce young kids to um, other kids that are on the spectrum.
Okay.
And so I have in this book, I have a 13-year-old boy who's on the spectrum, and he and his mother play a major role in the book. And he is very, very much in tune with wildlife and with animals and being able to communicate with animals. And that's what the story is about. And it's not unrealistic. Um, so that's a totally different story.
Is Chesterton in that story?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. And so, what do you think makes a good quality story? Is it following a certain arc, or is it just being creative and following, like you said, the idea and where it takes you?
Well, absolutely. The arc has to be there, of course. Um, but um, there's got to be consistency in the story, and the protagonist, the main Chesterton's got to have a problem that he's trying to solve. We have to know what it is that he wants and why he wants it, and how does he change when he doesn't get it or change when he gets it. What happens to him inside? Um, so we learn about the character. What we want to do is we want to learn about what's happening to the internal character, not what's happening externally to the character necessarily. With kids, when you're writing to second grade or third grade, it's the principle's the same. It's harder. It'd be a lot easier, I think, to write a novel for adults. Kids are so brutally honest. Every parent knows it. In the last book, in Wild Moon, I had a beta group. I got 8 kids from the elementary school, third, fourth, and fifth grades. I wrote the story. I gave it to these 8 kids with typos, everything. And we spent about 3 months meeting weekly. The kids got out of class to work on this. This was obviously pre-virus. And they critiqued my work, and
Wow.
they passed ideas, and they asked questions, and it was as much of a learning for me as it was for them.
What's the craziest? So this wasn't a question I had originally, but what's one of the craziest critiques you've ever gotten from a child?
I don't know. I had that's a good question. Um,
Well, you bring
I
up
had
kids that's so
I
brutally
always
honest.
do I always do question and answer after I've read the story to the
Yep.
kids, and we talked about who Chesterton is. What is this character? How would you describe him? And then I open it up for questions from anything they want to talk about. And I remember one little girl raised her hand. I think it was the first question in this session, and she said, "Are you Chesterton?" You know, what an awesome question.
Well, because
What an awesome question. You
and
know,
Chesterton kind of like is he's we all have a little bit of Chesterton. That's kind of my feeling with it because he's not just an animal. You are giving him a voice, and like you said, it's figuring out why does he want what he wants, and how is he going to.
right,
So your understanding is his nature. I don't want to say human nature because he's not a human, he's a weasel, but it goes in line with human beings and understanding the nature of wanting things or having feelings about certain things or making choices. And so a lot of people can relate, a lot of children can relate to those feelings, even in that simplified form that he has.
Oh. A lot of times we'll take a few minutes in a class to create a Chesterton story, and we'll let the kids as a class create a Chesterton story, and that's always fun.
Oh, I bet. I bet he has even better adventures. Oh my gosh, my mind's going. What would you say is your interesting writing quirk?
Interesting writing quirk.
Yeah, do you have some type of writing quirk or a certain place you have to write or a certain thing you have to do, or is there a certain thing you always include?
I don't know if it's a quirk, but a place to write. I typically, a lot of my creative thinking comes walking the beach or walking in the woods. Um, that's where I solve problems. That's where I take a character to the next, or the character leads me rather. Um, so I don't have, I'm not one of these people that has to be up at 5 at the desk to write every day. Um, and a lot of people find their spot, their time, that's their most creative. Um, I'm just not disciplined enough to do that. You know, um, I like to be outside doing my thinking and then make my notes um, and when you're doing this, you're always thinking. I don't care where I am. I could be at watching a movie, and all of a sudden something will happen, an idea will pop in and to my head and take over for a few minutes.
So in your opinion, so right now, we're obviously in a pandemic and school's not the same anymore. Literacy, especially for our younger children, is probably going much slower than it normally has gone. And can you speak a little bit about why literacy is so important and why writing and reading, they're tied together?
Mhm.
Why is it so important, especially right now, for us to continue pushing, especially at home? What are other things that parents can do to help create this love of literacy, not just of reading, but of writing?
Um, I think it's a great time to read for kids. It's a wonderful time to read because there's other things. They're not playing soccer. They're not doing all of the myriad of things that families and kids are wrapped up in today. So it is a good time to read. It's a good time to teach the value and the fun of reading. I, ironically, I was one of three sons, and I had the best mother in the world for three boys. But she was a jock. If it was a nice day, why are you in here reading? Why aren't you out playing basketball? Why don't you go take the dog for a walk? Get out in the sunshine. So as a kid, I never read, which is just amazing. That now I'm writing kids' books, and I never read as a kid. I was at a board meeting of an organization I was a part of a couple of years ago, and after the meeting, everybody was going around the room talking about what they were reading. And I didn't participate until finally somebody said, "Dean, what are you reading?" And I said, "Well, I just finished Curious George last night." And it was serious. I'm going back reading kids' books, stuff that I should have been doing back when I was a kid. But to your question, excellent time to learn to read, excellent time to learn to appreciate reading. And writing is just licensing the experiment. You know, a kid sees an ant crawling along the sidewalk. There's a story there.
I just thought of
Just
3 different
invite it.
stories just now in my head. I was like, oh, we could be doing this.
Encourage it. Yeah, encourage it. Because writing is, there isn't a profession that doesn't have to use it in some way. I don't care if you're just finished repairing a washing machine. You've got to write up your notes on that. You've got to communicate with somebody on paper, no matter what you're doing. And if you can learn how to do that with feeling and with some depth to it, then it really helps a career.
Absolutely.
And it starts early. It doesn't start when you're in college.
Yeah, literacy really is a key to freedom and being able to extend yourself. I mean, the whole world opens up just from simply being able to read fluently and write fluently. I've always taken for granted that I was blessed enough to grow up in a community and get an education where, I mean, it's like breathing for me. I don't remember ever struggling with it or anything like that. And I know there's many who do. But I found some of my biggest escapes in books at different points in my life, different series, different types of books, even comic books. I remember reading the Peeny's Elf Quest series back in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and that being kind of that, you know, middle school angsty kind of, you're starting to get towards teenage age. And I found a lot of comfort in that as your friends were changing, and it was like my standby. I could go and read that outside in my fort outside or under my bed in my tent. And again, we have this opportunity right now where, like we talked, we're getting outside more. And what a great way to just bring out a book. Last weekend on Saturday, I got both my kids up as soon as they were up, and I said, get a blanket, it's still chilly. Let's go sit out back, and we sat in the sun, and we read for like 3 hours, all of us, a big pile of books, just being outside and reading.
Yeah.
And my son was in a hammock. I was on the couch with a blanket, and my daughter was there listening to music while she read, and it was so nice, you know, and great time. We're outside and we're reading, you know. The behavior was excellent that weekend, I have to tell you. It was like the double whammy there. So you do some writing workshops with kids, and so what kind of suggestions do you have for kids or parents who want to become better writers?
Well, I heard two. One, a parent writing or a kid writing.
Yeah, so let's take them both. So for kids being writers, what's some tips for them to become better at it? So they've already started, they have an idea. How can they get better at it? We know that by simply doing it over and extending on that is helpful, but what else can they do?
I think not the easiest, but one of the best ways, and this is whether you're a kid or an adult, is sharing what you're working on. You know, when I first started with the first book, I joined a writers group at the community college. I had the librarian look at the story. She said, yes, you have something here. So I thought, okay, I need some help. I need to work on my craft. And so I joined a writers group, and they would critique my work, just like I just did with the 8 kids at Oak Ridge School. They critiqued. So if you can get a child to share it with others, you know, a grandparent, an uncle, an aunt, a neighbor, a teacher, whomever, but then the encouragement comes, and then the ideas come from somebody else, or a question that they start to think about. Oh, yeah, and they're back on track again, and they're at their craft. So what works for a beginning writer, professional writer, also works for kids. Share it, get feedback, and hopefully not just with people that are going to say, "Oh, that's just wonderful," but raise some questions.
I think that's a good point. It has to be honest, open feedback, and it can be put in a nice way no matter what. And that's important because that's part of also what's missing for our kids right now too, with so many in virtual school. They're not getting feedback on the learning like immediately, and that's part of quality education. And
Right.
so encouraging our kids, so when they're reading at home, maybe them writing a story and saying, hey, I'm happy to give feedback and read this, this story or this poem that you've come up with. And like you said, you may have an idea that they haven't thought of with a question that says, oh, well, what about this? And that sends them off on a whole nother avenue that gives some more depth to the story.
It's writing, helping a kid write isn't any different than working on any other behavior. It's encouragement, it's support, and recognition of their value of what they're doing and noticing it so that
Absolutely.
they keep on doing it. And the more they do it, even if they're making mistakes, those are going to get worked out. Their
Absolutely.
skill is going to, and that fuels their desire to write more.
Now, have your grandkids been inspired to do their own writing as well?
Yeah, very much so. Um, I have four grandkids. One of them, the only guy in the group, is not a writer. He's a very brilliant kid at WPI and working on engineering and talking a language I don't even understand. But the three girls have all expressed, not just in writing but other forms of creativity, photography, art. They all go together. So yeah, I think they've been encouraged by that. And my mom, as much of a outdoor person as she was, she wrote poetry, and that really did mean a lot to me growing up. Later on, I began to realize, wow, what a gift she had, and I know that was an inspiration for me to start doing something. I'm not a poet by any means. That's not my avenue of expressing myself.
Now, in the Chesterton series, I know you have a couple. So, do all the books come with like a parent or teacher guide, or just certain ones?
I think I think there's a teacher guide or parent guide in each one, but you're testing my memory here. Um, um, I think there is in each one. I have thought about, and there's also a glossary of
Oh, wow.
terms. Yeah, so that if they're talking about different creatures on the marsh, those will be defined, or places, those will be defined. In the Cottontail book, Chesterton Saves the Bunnies, um, there's actually an infographic in the back of that comes from U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
Oh,
They
wow.
Yeah, they gave me permission to use it. Just fit. I'd had the book done, and all of a sudden I found this online, and it was so fit perfect because I dedicated the book to Thornton Burgess, and this infographic includes comments or stuff about Thornton Burgess, and all about the disappearance of the cottontail, and so that's got a great glossary in it and teacher's guide, and I want to. When I started, my vision was I want to see the parent with the kid on the lap working on a book together. In fact, that class that I took, that writers group at the college, when I introduced the name Chesterton, a writer who had written a children's book said, "It'll never work." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Kids can't, it's too hard for kids to pronounce." And for me, that was it. It was a slam dunk. Chesterton. And I could see a mom or a dad sitting with a kid on the knee, Chesterton.
Yep.
And that becomes kind of a fun thing the next day of being able to pronounce that. And something happens in that process, that simple little process.
Absolutely.
There's some bonding that goes there.
Well, and I think you hit it right on the head. The bonding, that's crucial, because they talk about in all the parenting classes, if you take them through Cape Cod Healthcare and stuff, when they bring 8 cousins in to consult, they talk about how many thousands of words that a newborn to before they hit kindergarten, how many words those children have to either hear through your voice or through you reading to them and showing them, the pace at which you're going. And so I forget, I think it's like 1 million words or something. It's a lot. And I remember being overwhelmed by that. But it's really not. If you're reading every day to your children, and, you can incorporate song, if you can incorporate different types of reading. It could be poetry. It could be about Chesterton. It could be, you could read to a newborn, you could read parts of your book if you wanted, within reason. So it could be music that you're singing. Mm-hmm. So it's really about exposing them early on to these literacy skills. And that's simply by hearing it and then modeling it. And, a lot of people make story time a part of bedtime routine.
Absolutely.
Which I think is a great habit to have.
And to that point, I used to, with my son, our bedtime discussion was always about his farm. And he would tell me about what had gone on his farm that day. What was going on there was a connection that we were relating to one another in a very intimate, personal way, just the two of us. But I was also at that time, and I didn't realize it, I was introducing him to storytelling and the acceptance of storytelling. And he's an avid reader.
Yeah,
it's so subtle.
Yep. It absolutely is. And it's in everything. We talked a little bit about the heroes, the arc of the hero, or the arc of the main character. And that's such an essential part. I mean, every good story, even every good movie, is based on a good story. Mm-hmm. I mean, take Star Wars, for example. I mean, all that really is, as I learned in college, is the battle of good versus evil, light versus the dark. I mean, all you're doing is taking the arc of those two characters, the hero and the anti-hero, and arcing them together. And it goes a lot. That's what all stories are based on, because we want that type of story. We relate to that type of story as human beings.
Yeah.
And it's a great way, it's a great way for our kids to express themselves too. In doing this. So were you doing workshops for writing for kids? Are you still doing workshops like virtually or anything?
I haven't done any virtually. We've had some discussions with the principals here about that, but nothing's been done so far this year.
Hey, this might be the year, Dean. This might be the year, because they can't take field trips.
Right.
A lot of talk, I know I brought up in my PTO meeting, was, hey, if they're not going to be doing this, is there a way for us to bring experts in virtually to target certain things? 3rd grade is a really big year with the writing across the state.
Yeah.
So I could see, if Sandwich isn't interested, I'm sure there would be some schools in Falmouth that I can think of that would love to have you maybe come partner with them on some science and some writing with them. I think that would be wonderful, because it's not just giving our kids the regular experience in school. We need to bring in qualified experts in the field to help inspire them and say, the kids then see someone like you and they go, wow, he wasn't a writer right from the beginning, but he got into it and he's good at it and he loves it. And I could do that too, no matter how old I am. The possibilities are endless and it's inspiring to see. And your books, just the Chesterton series has such a great, there's just lots of good lessons within it and how you tie it into real life. You do, because you talk about the bunny book, and that's all about them losing their habitat, and how he's going to save this endangered species. I mean, that's true. And for all we know, maybe a weasel did save some of the cottontails. But even the town jumping one, where you talk about the boardwalk and inspiring kids to act on an action. I remember writing a story my son had to do last year. It was a persuasive argument to his principal. Change about school. And at first he was like, he was kind of hemming and hawing. I go, well, what would you change about school? He goes, more recess. And I go, all right, write that and tell us why. And I mean, he wrote like a page.
Just super.
On
Great.
each reason, like extended lunch, more recess, more outside time. And it was great. He just wanted to add more and more details. And once he got started, it just tumbled on out.
Yeah.
So it's great to see.
One thing I would mention to you that we haven't talked about is the character Chesterton.
Yes.
There's a purpose there. As I said, we found this. We found him in the woods, so there was nothing planned about that. That was totally a coincidence, if there are any. But I liked the idea of a weasel who's always had a bad rap. Nobody has ever said anything good about a weasel.
I know, poor weasels, right?
Huh?
Poor weasel.
They're sneaky. They've got bad reputation.
Yep.
But Chesterton doesn't. He's broken from that, and he's become his own character. And there's a whole message right in that.
I like that, because you don't always have to be who everybody thinks you are or what you're painted into a box to being. Right. You're free. You have choice. You're free to be whoever you want to be and live your life, no matter the mold that you've been painted into. I think that is a beautiful message. Because it's about being yourself.
It works with the kids, because as we're talking in a classroom, and I asked them to describe the words that they would use to give me the words that would describe Chesterton. And, they will tell me clever, fast, kind, witty, good-natured, whatever. And then it's so easy to jump from that. And is that what you understood about weasels? Have you ever heard about this? And give them the other side of what the weasel's reputation has been. And they get it. They get it.
Yeah. Well, people and things aren't always exactly how they appear to be, and that's a really good lesson, especially for kids, because they may feel a certain way inside, and in how they're perceived. Take a child with maybe special needs and say ADHD, and they're always wiggling and moving about and always getting in trouble. And so it may be one perception, but inside they're a totally different person. And so I think that's the second lesson here is don't always let your, what you perceive to be what a weasel is, color that, because they could be so much more, especially if you allow that to happen, and encourage it to flower, So So really quick, before we come back and wrap up, so we have this one part, Dean, that we do every week because nobody submitted any questions. So we're going to give away the gift card to something else, to an act of kindness. And this act of kindness is always to someone nominates someone to receive a present from us. And they tell a little story about them. And then what we do is we call the person and read it to them on the air to surprise them with it while we're here. So it's one of our favorite parts of our whole segment. And I'm glad you're with me tonight because it always makes me happy to do this. I like to spread a little cheer every week. So we're actually going to call Erin tonight. And we're going to just surprise her.
Hi, you've reached Erin
Edwards. We're going to leave a message.
Nurse practitioner in application and aesthetics. Please leave me a voicemail and I will return your call shortly. Thank you and have a great day. The mailbox is full.
Send her a text. All right. Well, we're going to say it to her. I'm going to read this really quick. Erin Edwards is our winner this week, and she's described by her nominator as someone who is ever kind, an amazing mom, single mom to two wonderful children. She works as an RN, and she never stops. She's always willing to lend an ear to her friends, and she's always willing to drop everything to be by their sides if they need anything at all. So, Erin, thank you so much for you being you. You are tonight's winner of the 1856 Country Store card. I hope you go buy yourself some candy and maybe pose on the political benches before the upcoming election. Get maybe straddle both for the middle. I don't know the way it's going. So definitely check it out. And thanks so much for being you. And I hope you spread some kindness your way. Thanks, Erin. So Dean, just to wrap up here, we have some people just tuning in and saying hi to us as we go. Are there any last things that you want to make sure we cover or make sure people know?
My website is, I don't know if you posted or...
I'm going to bring it back up here, deancobooks.com.
That's right. And books are available there, or the narrations are free to listen to a narration. Or there it's Eight Cousins or Titcombs, or, if they're not at your local bookshop, then ask them why and get in touch with me.
That's right. You all need to carry Chesterton, okay?
Right.
That little Cape Cod hero. And Dean is, hopefully I can convince him to maybe do some story time with Santa for the holiday season, maybe a special series with our Cape Kids cast. You and I can talk behind the scenes. Maybe we can plan something special. But I would look forward to that. Dean is
great. Super.
It's great to have someone like you in our community. You didn't really do your bio justice earlier. When you introduced yourself, you've just been involved with so many different things. You were with the YMCA. When I look at your bio, and I told my father that you were my guest, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, that's the guy who's involved in this. I remember him." And he knew all about you because you've worked with the United Way and Spaulding and the library and the community bank. Thornton, Burgess, Greenbrier. You're very active in the community, and I'm very blessed that we get to have someone like you, and I'm glad that you decided to pick up a pen and become an author, and teach us all. I've talked for years. I kind of want to write a book, and I say it all the time. And then I don't know, I start writing, but then I stop because I'm like, well, is that really how I want to start? And you made a good point earlier tonight. Just go with it. Just go with it, and you can always come back and add or, transition, but just write. Writing is one of the best things you can do. Even journal.
Yeah, absolutely. Great practice.
Right.
Great practice.
I know some parents who write letters. They've been writing letters to their kids every year since they were born. I kind of wish now I had done that, to be honest with you. But it's not too late, so maybe I will start doing that because it's a good thing,
My first book, what turned out to be a book was going to be one page that I wanted to give my kids when they turned 16. These are the important things in life. And I figured I'd be just something I could have on their wall. Well, it wound up to be a 30-page book, and it took me 8 years.
Wow.
And they're the only ones that got it.
Wow.
So it's just a matter of staying with it and keep tweaking it and having fun with it.
Absolutely. And there's no wrong way, you know.
No.
You know, and maybe that's the best lesson we can give our kids is showing them by example. You know, read a book, maybe journal with them at the end of every day, just a couple thoughts, and maybe encourage them, write their own story, create their own universe.
Absolutely.
You know, look at Tolkien. I mean, he created a whole world with languages, and there's been many authors since then. I mean, you're creating a whole world with Chesterton. And so who knows what one of our kids will do, maybe even
Right.
around here next, you know?
Absolutely.
So definitely encourage your kids, read with them, get outside and read with them, go hiking, find a good spot to hike and read at, write your observations, you know, just encourage and nurture that love, because literacy, it really is. It's a key to the future and having freedom in our world. It really is. And there's so many people around the world that never, ever get the chance to read or write in some countries. And we're very lucky that our children have this opportunity.
And getting into the local library
Absolutely.
is huge. That just can rub off so much.
Yeah, and our libraries are fantastic, and they're slowly starting to reopen. So I hope people take advantage of that, or even check them out and go get your books and take them home safely. But you know, keep nurturing that. It's a key to knowledge, and knowledge is as we know, power in this world, and that's everything. So I'll let you have the last word, Dean.
My last word will be thank you, Amy, for all you're doing. And thank you to the moms and the dads that are struggling through this and being teachers and coaches and everything that they're called upon to do. What a tough time. And I just appreciate, you know, the parents that are going through what they're going through to try and balance work and home and school and everything else. It's got to be just horrendous. So thank you, parents.
Thank you so much to Dean Coe for being my amazing guest this evening, local children's author, and you'll be seeing him again hopefully soon with a partnership with Cape Cod Moms, maybe for the holidays. And we'll be sure to hear more about Chesterton's adventures. Be sure to check out Molly's 2 reviews of 2 of the books on our website, capecodmoms.com. You can also visit deancobooks.com, where you can purchase the books. You can also listen to them on audio. And Dean has some other information on there as well. Thank you so much for joining us this week on the Parent Pod. Next week, we will be joined again by Tracy Lamperti, where we will discuss family meeting again and actually taking you through what it's going to look like so you can take notes as we go. And in the future, she'll be talking to us about couples. The week after that is Tina and Christina from Cape Cod Advocate. And the final week right before Halloween is going to be a fun episode where we will be joined by Alexandra Speck again, as well as Davey McLean from the Landfall. And he will be doing a cocktail mocktail mixy hour, and we will be making with and without spirits Halloween cocktails. So be sure to tune in, submit your questions for all our upcoming guests here. Thank you so much again for joining us. Dean, thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.